Hello, and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynne. I'm a journalist and content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we bring you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. I just want to give a shout out to Rounded, our sponsor, because I know for me, my quarterly BAS used to be so stressful. But I love Rounded because everything is there and so tidy, Rach.
I know, no more shoe boxes of receipts. I also really love that my accountant can log into the program remotely and help me with lodgement. Just do it without me needing to even worry about it.
That's what we love.
But best of all, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you can save 20% on any annual Rounded plan. Even if you've got the Rounded discount last year, you can get it this year as well.
Awesome. The show notes always have the details.
Yeah.
Hi, Rach. So I want to ask you, do you pitch to your editors or clients, or is most of your work commissioned?
I feel really funny answering this because we've just been talking with one of our editors off air about how little I pitch and how much I should do it more. We were talking, weren't we, about how, when an editor gets to know you, they will often just send you a commission. And you can get a little bit lazy, but it's on my to-do list to pitch more this year. I think it's important to exercise that muscle. What about you? Are you a lazy pitcher?
True. I am a lazy pitcher, and I have to admit that most of my work is commissioned. And I guess that once you've been around doing this for as long as I have, most of the work does come to me, and that does make me a bit lazy. And I guess sometimes I think COVID showed for me, which is when I first pitched to Rob, actually, because it showed me that you can get a bit complacent with who you work for and you keep working for the same thing. And then that what happened with me in COVID is a couple of the publications shut that were regular things. And I've had one of my regular publications close last year and another one just shut last week. And I think you've just got to keep being out there. So this is why that we thought we'd talk about pitching, and we've got one of our editors on the podcast. So I'll probably find out how often I should be pitching him. His name is Rob Johnson, and I know you write for him too. So he's a fabulous editor, and do you want to introduce him?
I'd love to. So Rob Johnson has worked as a journalist and editor on a variety of publications, including Rolling Stone and Who Weekly, before becoming one of the founding editors of youth culture magazine Juice. He's also worked on Good Weekend, the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age as a feature writer, and as a senior journalist on B2B, Title Ad News. Rob has worked in content marketing since 1998, writing and editing magazines for the Australian Council, Air New Zealand, Ansett, BMW, Subaru, Westpac, the Restaurant and Catering Association, the New South Wales Department of Education, and many more. In 2004, Rob teamed up with Mark Brown to create Engage Media, a boutique agency which publishes its own B2B magazines in the dental and veterinary space and creates magazines, apps, and digital content for other businesses. Wowzers! Welcome, Rob.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Rob, we both know you as our editor, so it's very exciting to have you on the podcast. You also spoke at our summit a couple of years ago, but we don't really know the story. I mean, we've heard a little bit in the bio, but the story of your career and how Engage came to be. So tell us a bit about that.
Sure. Well, Engage was an arranged marriage.
We like that.
Between myself and Mark Brown. So both myself and Mark had at different times worked for a company called Palamedia that was owned by David Koch, if anyone remembers him from back in the early 2000s. Then when Palamedia went broke, we both found ourselves approached by two of the people who used to work there, who started their own media recruitment company, to work for a company called Investor Info, which was basically a finance publisher, and they wanted to start their own content arm because finance publishing revenues were going downhill, surprisingly. So we were brought on board to sort of start a content publishing arm for them. And then when they started to go broke and sell themselves to someone else, we were offered the chance to buy ourselves, like slaves buying our own freedom. But yes, my
Nice.
career feels very much like, jumping from one crumbling edifice to the next until we got to this point where we could have our own thing that we could build up and have a bit of control over. And that's where Engage started. That was 20 years ago.
Wow.
Wow. So I've done a bit of work for Engage, different titles that you have, and I know the business a little. You seem to have a really good team. What do you like about running a business? I think about when you talk about crumbling edifices, maybe that's the answer.
Well, it kind of is. I mean, one of the things I really like about it is as you say, having a good team.
Mm,
We're all sort of living the Gen X fantasy lifestyle of we're all equals, and we all just doing our bit and working together. But I mean, one of the things that we deliberately do at Engage is we don't silo the advertising from the advertising team, from the editorial team, from the design and production team. Everywhere else I've worked, you were all on different floors. And if an advertising person walked into the editorial floor in Fairfax, for example, it would be like klaxons went off and,
mm.
Yeah.
and everyone just sort of stopped like
Mm,
a leopard walking into a pack of fruit or something. So we wanted everyone to see what everyone else did. And I
yeah.
think that's really important. So the ad sales people can say, "Oh, that's actually what editorial does with their day." So I can't walk in there at the last minute and ask them to produce an ad for someone because they've got all these other things on. So that was one thing that I loved about it. And the other thing is, yes, having a total view of the business, because so often you'd be blindsided by something. You'd be doing your job really well and you'd be having great success, and then someone would come along and say, "Oh, by the way, the New South Wales ad manager got sick 3 months ago and we haven't sold an ad since, so we're closing down."
Mm.
Okay.
It's just- yeah.
So you have a bit of that total overview, and that's something that I like about it. So you can see what's coming.
Mm,
Mm. I really like that model. Well, you were and as I mentioned above, you were a panelist at our first summit talking about what editors and content chiefs were looking for in writers. And also, I think we touched a bit on how AI is impacting that landscape. So I'm just going to address the elephant in the room because it's coming up to nearly 2 years since that event. And I'd love to know if you're seeing a lot more AI in how writers pitch you or even in the work they're submitting.
There's two things. So in terms of just the general how it's impacting us,
mm,
I found it very disappointing. And it's disappointing because I'd really like AI to be able to eliminate some double handling that happens nowadays in publishing, because you publish simultaneously to a website and to the magazine, and you promote it on social media, and you're doing your newsletter to tell people about it as well.
mm.
And I'd really like AI to be able to just read, the fact that I've put up a new post, read the post and create all of that stuff automatically.
Yeah,
It's
that would be
actually,
handy.
yeah, it's possible. It can do it, but it's a real pain in the butt
Mm,
getting all the bits to speak to each other.
mm,
And you just look at the steps that you have to do it, and makes my eyes spin counterclockwise and give up. So it'd be nice if that happened. In terms of pictures and stories, it's still clearly obvious if a story is written by a bot.
Mm,
I'm actually not that. I don't have a lot of problems with AI, using AI to write a pitch. I don't. I think it's fantastic for research.
mm,
Often a deep, is it DeepSeek, the Chinese one, or a ChatGPT
mm,
search will be as good, if not better, than a Google search if you're looking for general information, and it'll contextualize it a bit for you. So that would make
yeah.
pitching easier. So I'm just not seeing a lot of evidence for that. Another thing it could be good for is scaffolding, and I've used AI for scaffolding stories myself, but whether writers are using that, it's not really clear because they're probably writing and rewriting, which
mm,
is what a professional does. So
mm.
Yeah.
And you
Mm.
use you've got a lot of regular contributors as well, and you probably would recognize if they started turning in AI generated content, wouldn't you?
yes, I mean you very quickly see when something. And look, also I'm not a fascist about it. If somebody sits down and says, "Oh, I'm just going to let AI knock up this paragraph because it's a paragraph of background," and it's you can kind of tell that it's been written
Mm,
remotely, if you like, I'm okay with that as long as it
mm.
makes sense. If they're trying to do the entire story, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
will show up immediately. You'll see it immediately, and you just say, "Well, I could get ChatGPT to do that.
So how do you manage it if a writer's clearly using AI? Have you had any of those tricky conversations?
Luckily, no. But I mean, again, if quotes are plagiarized, or they're missing. I mean, we have had situations before AI when people have filed a story with no quotes. And we've gone back to them and said, well, who are your experts to get this information? And they said, oh, well, if you want experts and interviews, you'll have to pay me more.
Oh.
We all had a laugh and then threw it away and ignored them, which is fine.
Never commission them again.
Yeah, and they just wouldn't get paid because they haven't done the work. So,
Yeah.
It'd be nice if I could find a job where you get paid for not doing work, but I'm not going to supply someone with that.
Yeah. Well, you wrote a really great post for Rachel's list before. We're going to put that in the show notes. And, it touched on, how much editors really rely on pictures, from good journalists. Why is that? Like, I mean, how does it keep the wheels turning, having someone constantly pitching you ideas?
Sure. Well, to give you an idea, we currently publish 2 monthly magazines, 1 quarterly and 2 biannuals. So in each of the monthlies, you've got about 6 feature articles and 3 regular articles every month for each of them. And then for the quarterly and the biannuals, you've got between 6 and 13 features per issue. So that comes to publishing about 290 stories every year.
Yeah,
And
it's a lot, isn't it?
Yes. Well, also, if your hit rate for coming up with good ideas is about 50%, which is a fantastic hit rate, if 1 in every 2 ideas you come up with, is a winner, then you're looking at generating about 600 ideas a year. And that's just, exhausting, basically. And it's relentless. You finish one issue and you've got to start the next one, and then you finish that and you've got to start the next one. So if you want to have at any time during the year some kind of a break, then you're incredibly grateful if a bit of that workload can be taken off you by people pitching ideas. And it's actually rare that I would do an entire issue where every idea was pitched by a writer. But even if half of them are, or even if a couple of them are, then that makes a huge difference to my workload.
Journos are coming to you with ideas that perhaps you wouldn't have, or angles that you wouldn't have thought of, or new trends and that sort of thing. And I know that John has always been really good at that. Is that something as well? You're getting fresh stuff that you just might not have thought of?
Yes. I mean, yes, that's what you do look for. But it's also sometimes it's okay if it's a new angle on an old idea. And so that's not the criteria, like that novelty is not the criteria that I judge a story pitch on.
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. Well, I know, having worked in food magazines for years, the classic thing is every year you have to do Christmas. And then, yes, you can do different things at Christmas, but basically Australia still wants a turkey and a ham. And that's what you have to do. You've got to do a new thing, but it is Christmas. And I must say that, having edited a food magazine for 5 years or something, I mean, I could not think of anything new to do Christmas, or a gingerbread house. That's the other one.
Yeah, there's often that set editorial calendar, isn't there, on so
Yeah.
many mags? Yeah.
And those editorial calendars, they're there for a reason, and they draw advertising in, and it's a really good thing. The challenge I find in editing is often working your way between those gaps.
Yes.
In some magazines, the gaps are bigger than others.
Yeah.
So do you think pitching is a rare skill, like pitching a good story?
So there's 2 things in that. One, the pitching bit, and one, the good story bit.
Yes.
So pitching is actually, in my experience, still very rare. It's the most common, and I mean, that's not to say that it doesn't happen at all, and I'm very happy when it does happen. The most common approaches I get is an email saying, hi, I'm such and such, and I'm available for work. Or, hi, I'm such and such, and I have a gap in my schedule, and do you have any stories you can send me?
Oh my gosh.
And, when you get that, you think, well, if you have that time, that's wonderful. Why don't you use that to generate some ideas and then pitch them to me?
Do you say that? Do you go back and actually write that?
I try and write it in a polite way.
Yeah. Diplomacy.
Towards it, and say, have a look at the website where the magazines are, and have a look at some back issues, and see if you can come up with some ideas that would fit. And frequently, that's the last I hear from people.
Wow.
So then the next bit, the good story bit, is from reading a lot of story pitches over the last, not only over the last 20 years, over the last 30 years, I've rarely seen evidence of people having some kind of system to generate story ideas and to generate good ideas. It's more often the kind of, catch a story idea as it floats past. They've heard something on the radio, or they've met someone at a party or something like that. And that's kind of fine. It can work, but it won't work regularly, which I can say with confidence because we have to generate so many ideas ourselves. You need some kind of a system to actually do it effectively.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What kind of system do you guys have for your ideas for, keeping them and saving them and I don't know, extrapolating them? Do you have something set up?
Yeah, I use Trello.
Mm-hmm.
I use a Trello board, and every time someone pitches an idea, I immediately I'll read the pitch, obviously, and if it's something that's absolutely no use that we've just done or that we've done a million times, then I'll write back to them immediately and say, I'm really sorry, we've done that a million times. Don't worry about it. Everything else goes word for word onto the Trello board with a note of who pitched, because I know one of the things that sucks more than anything else when you're a freelancer is you pitch a story idea to a magazine and 5 months later they publish that story idea with someone else's name on it.
Yes.
And that does happen. And because I'm, a positive thinking person, I'd like to believe that it happens by accident. And it can happen by accident. If you've got a lot of stories just sort of chucked in there and you haven't got a record of who sent them to you, that makes perfect sense. So yeah, basically, and I keep that list and then I don't look at it again until I'm commissioning particular. So I've got a different list for every magazine, and when I'm commissioning the next issue of that magazine.
I can see Trello being really useful for that kind of system. I used to use it, but I know, Lynn, you're a big fan of it, aren't you?
Yeah, I use it actually. I have all my pictures on Trello. Sort of pictures sent, and then when they become like work, and I move it through the system. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah. You do need some system. I mean, a lot of people use Google Sheets too. I mean, it doesn't have to be as fancy as Trello.
Yeah. Well, Rob, tell us what sort of pictures hit the mark for you and automatically go onto the yes pile, into Trello, ready to be commissioned.
I look for three things, and if it doesn't have those three things, then it's out the door and a big no immediately. One is that it shows evidence of thinking about the audience for the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or that it's specifically for, it's kind of the same thing, specifically for a segment of that audience. So, for the dentist magazine, if somebody pitched a story that is specifically targeted at early career dentists or retiring dentists, that's a big tick, number one, straight away. Number two, stories that fit in a particular spot in the magazine. So, if you look at the contents page of any magazine, you'll see it's done in sections. There'll probably be one or two stories in every section. So when it fits in one of those sections, that's another big tick. And third, if the writer specifies the format of the story as well as the content. So it's not just, this is a story on the new head of the Vets Association, but this is a Q&A with the new head of the Vets Association. Or this isn't just a story on what you do to prepare for end of financial year. It's here's 15 tips that you have to do too. So I can see that it's a listicle. I can see that it fits in the business section of the magazine, and I can see, and that's so a weak story idea. I will still hang on to that pitch if it fits those criteria.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you see a lot of mistakes, like common mistakes that freelancers use when they pitch?
Yes. And they're kind of related to that. Only two that are related to each other is firstly not considering the audience. So, we've got a vets magazine as mentioned before, and if someone writes in saying, "Oh, I've got this great story on how pet owners can help with their dog with wellness," so well, that's probably a great story, but it's completely inappropriate for my magazine. So I know.
Yeah.
And kind of linked to that is stories that are too broad. So people will pitch, I've got a great story on business tips for small businesses like dentists. Okay, yeah, well, No. It's so absurdly broad that that doesn't tell me anything about it.
Yeah.
Another classic mistake is pitching a topic we've covered extensively. So that's, kind of easily spotted by going onto the website of the magazine and just doing a search for, if you're thinking of pitching something on mental health for vets, go onto our Vet Practice Mag website and search mental health for vets and see how many stories come up, and you'll change your mind, because we've done it a lot. And probably the worst one, which is kind of related to something we talked about before, if somebody emails me and says, well, what are you looking for? And so, well, you can find out yourself. Look at the back issues of the magazine. Do a search on the website if you have a vague idea in mind of what kind of thing, and again, sort of build that into your own system for generating ideas.
Yeah. It's interesting about the notion of, giving you one idea or giving you five. I used to have this whole system where I'd give three ideas and I'd think two were really good and one was a bit crap. And invariably the crap one would get commissioned. It just always confounded me. But anyway, I know you like it when journos pitch in bulk. So, why is this, and how many story ideas do you typically like to receive?
The more stories, the better. But I know that that system that you talked about, I think it's referred to in the film industry, or was, as the blue dog system. Yeah, throw in a blue dog because that's the thing they'll take out. And then you can get on with what you want to do. It's a bad idea for me to pitch something that is going to be cut out, because effectively what you're doing, if you pitch three ideas and I'm going to chuck one of them out, I probably will chuck it out. And so you've really only pitched two ideas. So then you've lowered your potential strike rate. So the more ideas you pitch, the more likely you are to get one or more good ones in that group. But there's no set number. If you pitch 10 profiles and I've already covered 6 of them, then you've effectively only pitched 4 stories.
Yeah.
But, with having said that before about the number of story ideas we're generating, and we've been doing it over 20 years, and still, as the old TV show used to say, there's 8 million stories in the naked city.
Yes.
We're nowhere near the 8 million mark. There's still plenty of stories out there that are available.
Also, I think like the whole pitching in bulk thing, if you think about it, it's your one chance to get an editor's attention. So why would you pitch one idea when you could potentially pitch 5 and maybe get 2 of them picked up? Editors it's hard to get their attention. They get lots of emails every day. So you may as well do more than just one.
Yeah. It makes them linger on your email. If you've got 3 story ideas there, they can read it a lot quicker than if you've got 10.
Yep. Yeah.
Interesting. I know that Engage Media mostly does custom media where there might be a client involved. What sort of difference does that make when you're dealing with pitching?
It depends on the client. So some of them might only want their own customers' profile in the magazine, and so that's impossible to pitch on, because there's no way a writer could know. And even if the writer does know that they're a customer, it might be a customer that the company actually hates. So necessarily put yourself through the effort of doing that. And other ones, other magazines that we've talked about, such as the trade one for CSS and Quick Copy, they're open to broader ideas and they're open to pitches. Just backtrack and correct you a bit, in that the custom work we do is less frequent than the magazines we own. So we do 24 issues a year of our own magazines and 8 issues a year of custom magazines.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, you're going to get a better hit rate if you go for one of the ones we own anyway.
Makes sense.
I know one of your bugbears is freelancers who pitch stories that they can't actually deliver. Tell us why. Why does this piss editors off so much, and how can you avoid doing it as a freelancer?
Well, if I commission you to do something, what I'm effectively saying is I trust you. So if you don't deliver and don't tell me or ghost me, I take it personally because I've trusted you and you've abused that trust. You've also put me in a position where I have to do more work to fill the hole in the magazine that has been left by you not delivering. But having said that, sometimes non-delivery is unavoidable. Sometimes the person that you were going to interview just has gone overseas or won't take your calls or something like that, in which case the sooner I know about that, the better. Because, and linked to that, the way to avoid it is by having backups, by having a backup expert, if it's not in mind. So if it's not the person that you were going to speak to as your expert isn't available, you've got another expert to go to. If the case study that you were going to do isn't available, you've got another case study to go to. And that just lets you overcome that hurdle. And then when you're communicating with me, you're not saying, oh, by the way, Rob, I'm not going to deliver that. Instead, you're saying, oh, by the way, Rob, I've hit a problem. Here's my solution. I love getting emails when people say, here's my solution. Makes me so happy.
Gosh, I always find that. But I know it's really hard sometimes, I must admit, that in that pitching process to get the experts that you can get without necessarily disappointing the experts. So you might say, I could speak to an expert here. It's sort of a chicken and egg thing. It's quite tricky to get an unusual expert on board if you don't know if the story is going to have legs.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think one of the things that makes that easier is when you start regularly writing for a publication and you start to get a feel for who's always going to take the call and who's never going to take the call.
Yeah.
And you sometimes see that, you'll notice with other people's work in the magazines, you'll notice certain experts appearing time and time again. I can only think of one magazine which we don't do anymore, we had to actually brief the writers not to interview a particular expert because this guy always took the call. And it became, his magazine virtually was quoted in half the stories.
Oh, yeah.
Was he a dentist?
It was actually in the hospitality industry. And
okay.
a very knowledgeable guy. He was really smart, and he's really sort of high profile consultant who works within that industry. It's just that he always took the call. So journalists learnt that and always called him for the expert commentary. I'd get to that paragraph in the story and go, oh, not him again.
Yeah. You definitely need a mix.
Yeah. And I certainly know hospitality, having written a few of those stories, some of those people, they are erratic. They've got sort of all over sort of work schedules, so they're working when you're not. There's sort of their time receptive to ideas or interviews is 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's a tricky thing. Yeah, they're particularly hard, I must admit. Yeah. So what would you like freelancers to know about the pitching process and the cycle that you have at Engage?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of points there in that, because I don't think freelancers necessarily see this if they don't work within a company, but the story might actually be a great idea, but it has to appear in the context of other stories in an issue of the magazine. Yeah. So I might like it, but I might not know when it's going to actually fit in a magazine. I'm also juggling the staff capacity for copy editing and for design and for subbing and for proofing. And so we have a production cycle for that whole thing. And I generally don't commission until the very start of that production cycle. So, Rachel, when you're saying sometimes it'll be a month or longer between when you pitch an idea and when I actually get back in touch and say, okay, let's go. That can actually be a good sign. It just means that you've pitched the idea a day or so after I've commissioned an issue. And so I'm just going to put it in the next one.
Yeah.
It's not, if you don't hear a no straight away, that's not a no.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a different cycle to other publishers. So, yeah, but I find once you get to know how Engage works in the magazines and stuff, you know that there's a possibility that commission is coming. Yeah. It's good
I do know that with some of the house stories I write for some of the magazines, they're very seasonal. Yeah. A strong kitchen they'll hold for the kitchen issue. If it's got a sort of a wintry, darks and moody thing, they'll hold to the cooler months. And if it's got a pool, they'll put it in January. So there's often those sort of seasonal things. And I'm sure, and it's the same with food, obviously. But yes, I'm sure every publication would have some cycle.
Yeah.
Just on a basic production level, you need a 3-month lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need a month to get your copy in, you need a month to get it designed and sub-edited and proofread, and you need about a week to get it printed.
Yeah.
And then distributed.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to know, because I'm sure that there are people listening who want to know this as well. How likely are you to trust a writer who's not that experienced, even if they send you a really cracking pitch?
Highly likely. Highly
Okay.
likely if it's a
Okay.
good pitch, yeah. And that's it's entirely based on the story idea.
Yep.
Someone's experience and where they've written before means virtually nothing to me.
Okay.
Previous stories, if they put clippings of previous stories, that means pretty much nothing to me as well. And that's because if you say, I used to work on the New York Times, I don't know whether you worked on the New York Times for a week or 10 years. I don't know whether you were sacked because you were hopeless. I don't know any of those things. So that kind of doesn't mean anything. And if you say, okay, here's 3 stories I've done that I'm really proud of, I don't know whether the subs rewrote them. I don't know whether the editor made you write them 5 times. I don't know whether, your technical skills are up to scratch and how often that had to be fixed. So the only thing I judge it on is the quality of that story idea and its relevance to the audience. So if you've got very little experience but a great idea, yeah, you've got a very, very good chance.
Oh,
That's
that's
interesting, because
interesting.
I don't know if all editors operate like that.
Well, I mean, if I think it's dangerous to operate on someone's previous experience
Hmm.
because, as I said, you don't unless you've actually worked in there, or unless you can ring up their former editor, which you can sometimes do, and say, if they name someone that they've worked closely with. When
Mm.
I've done that, the person who they have worked closely with has said, "I'm surprised they put me as a referee."
Oh
Gosh,
dear. It's not what
Mm.
you want to
gosh.
hear.
Have you been surprised by the quality of some freelancers' work? Like somebody you might have known or has a name, and then you actually see their raw copy?
Yeah, I was going to say good surprised or bad surprised.
You tell me. You tell me.
I've actually had both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes, and actually it can vary with the individual writer.
Mm.
So it's not really a kind of a black or white thing. If you sometimes you'll get someone who does their first couple of stories terrifically, and then the quality will start to
Yeah.
fade a bit as they're taking on a lot of stuff and taking the work that they're getting from you for granted.
Mm.
And other times the work will come. I mean, there's basic things like you expect it to be written in sentences. Um, and I have had people file in dot point form and then ring up and say, just get the subs to fix it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I mean, that sounds shocking to us, but like in the old newspaper days, people would phone their stories in and the subs would write it. So, that's kind of not unheard of.
Yeah.
But I would not be impressed if someone filed in dot point form. I expect a writer to write.
Mm.
In terms of bad surprise, it just kind of, I mean, I'll still possibly give you a go, even if it's an unpleasant surprise, because all I'm doing is working out what you like doing and what you're good at, and what you don't like doing and what you're not good at.
Mm.
If you regularly file late and write poor quality copy, or don't file at all, then you're less likely to get a commission.
Mm.
Mm.
I might be a little
Interesting.
more generous than some other editors in that sense, but life gets in the way sometimes, and that's fine. That happens to everyone.
Mm.
Mm.
I think it's interesting. I remember being horrified as an editor of a food mag and getting a copy of a journalist that I'd always venerated, and it was just riddled with errors. And that it was, the subs did it and found lots of errors, and um, I never commissioned them again. And I always wonder about all those subs over the years that had been making this writer look good.
Yeah, yeah. There's some fantastic subs out there who are doing wonderful favors to writers. And there are some writers, and there's one writer who particularly sticks in my mind, who I had to actually send a sub over to their house to extract their copy from them, and they hid from the sub. He was then on the phone to me at the front door, and I'm saying, just keep banging on the door. I know it's there.
Gosh.
Mm. I
Oh.
worked on a weekly once where there was an entertainment writer who used to get the big names, but her copy was always late. They had to hold, they'd be at die line stage and she would be ringing up and basically dictating her copy over the phone. And I was like, why do you keep hiring her? And it was just because she had the black book, she had the contacts, and they just put up with it. Seems
Yeah.
ridiculous to me that you could dictate your copy over the phone.
Mm.
If you've got a black book no one else has in
Yeah.
Yeah.
a particular context, then yeah, that makes you very valuable.
Mm.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. What about the business side, Rob? Like I've heard from editors who are really horrified at how slow some writers are at invoicing. I like to get my invoicing in a very snappy manner. But do you
Me
get
too.
do you get writers who just like don't invoice you for like months on end, even to the point you have to chase them up to invoice?
Yes, it's rare to get people who I have to chase up to invoice. If they've forgotten, I've probably forgotten as well. But then they chase me up 6 months' time and say, "Oh, I've never paid this invoice," and I say, "Well, you've never given it to me." We pay on acceptance. So the later you invoice, the later you get paid. It's in your interests to, and most writers send their invoices along with their stories, and I'm completely comfortable with that because it means I can file the story in the copy in file and put the invoice up in Xero and and take care of it all.
Yeah.
And that kind of links to the question about the production cycle earlier, actually, because we and I know a lot of publications pay on publication, and we used to pay on publication because it helps you align costs with revenues, and that helps you control the cash flow because not all your advertisers are going to pay on time, and we still have all our fixed costs like staff and insurance, software, and all of that, and the print and mail bills, and the contributors, and so on. So I can kind of see the logic of a freelancer saying, "Well, I'll just try and invoice you with whatever your invoice cycle is." But I mean, we really made an effort, and it was quite a big deal for us to be able to pay on acceptance. And it took many years to get the company to that point. And we do it specifically because it's respectful to writers.
That's
It's
so
great. I
nice.
know when you switched to that, I think every writer out there who writes for Engage was very happy.
We were kind of happy too because you don't want to treat people badly. And one thing I used to hate with that pay on publication production cycle
Yeah.
is with a 3 month lead for publication. And I mean, sometimes it would be the month after publication with some publishers. It's unfair to ask someone to do something and then get paid in 3 or 4 months' time. And if you have to hold their story back, then what, paid in 6 months' time or something? I think that's really not a good way to treat people.
It's definitely like a really important change, I think, because it's something at Rachel's List that we always talked about. Like if you're writing for magazines that pay on publication, you need to have enough that pay on acceptance or enough work to ensure you've got that cash flow. Like often with travel mags, isn't that true, Lynn? They all pay on publication or they used to. And so,
Some do, I think, yeah.
yeah, travel writers were always
A
caught.
really major newspaper group in Australia pays on publication, and editors have been known to hold stories for 8 months. Yeah.
Yeah, so you sort of had to have this strategy in mind with a mix of the right clients so that you could basically not be eating 2-minute noodles because anyway, so it's a good thing ultimately.
We talked a little bit about following briefs on the podcast lately, where a few of our guests it's just come up, and I wondered what your perspective on that, because I even wrote an article for Rachel's List about freelancers who don't follow briefs, and that came out of a conversation from John Burford, who is the editor of Byte magazine that you talked about. So do you see that a bit too?
Less, I personally see it less so, and it's mainly because I use writers I know and trust. And they've become writers I know and trust because they follow briefs.
Yes.
But again, it's not black and white. Sometimes, it can be close enough. And depending on what else I've got on and what other magazines are going through the system and all of those other things, then you might say, well, it's not perfect, but it's kind of 75% of perfect, and I'm okay with that. So, if they regularly don't follow briefs, if they regularly don't file, and then you start to question it, and then you just stop sending them work.
Yeah. Interesting.
So tell us like how and where you find your writers and how freelancers can get on your, into your
Black book.
writer's little black book, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the best way, 100% the best way, is to pitch successfully and often. And the best way to pitch successfully and often is to have a system for generating story ideas, like lots of them. And the best way to have a system for generating story ideas is to think of who the story is for. So think of my audience. Think of what the format of the story is, whether it's a profile or a narrative or a Q&A or a listicle or whatever, and think of where the story sits in the magazine. So, if a magazine never runs a list type story as its cover story,
Mm.
then don't pitch that as a cover story because you're guaranteed a no.
Mm.
But if they do run them elsewhere in the magazine, absolutely, for sure.
Mm.
And that's the best way.
Mhm.
I do see some mistake by sort of new freelancers being made is that they write the story or have the story and then pitch it out to somebody instead of what you're saying is thinking of the publication first and coming up with pitches then. Sometimes people have a story and think, where can I pitch this? And that's probably the wrong way around,
What,
isn't it?
they've written the entire story.
Or at least got the idea or the interview or something. They've got the idea thinking, I've got this great story about such and such or this person or this destination when it's travel, and I'll just pitch the story out. Who can I pitch it to? We see call outs like that a lot, don't we, Rach?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it's like the academic publishing model where you write the story first and then place it.
Yeah.
That doesn't
It
work.
never works.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, like maybe if you're a genius writer and the way that you write just happens to coincide perfectly with the style of the magazine, the odds of that are very, very small.
Yeah.
When I get them, normally I'll have a quick read and then, write an email back saying thank you for thinking of us and we won't use this at this time. Good luck.
I think it looks pretty amateurish, especially if you're pitching business magazines that might have a set, way that they want you to write something or anything. But I do remember in my early years that I pitched a couple of travel stories to, the supplements in the paper, like Escape and stuff, and included really amazing photos. And I had two picked up that way, the entire article. So in travel, I think it can maybe work sometimes.
Publishing is a visual medium, which most people forget. But that was something that, Toby Creswell hammered into me back in the Rolling Stone and Juice days.
Yeah.
Publishing is all about the pictures. The words are important. The words are vital. That's what actually draws people in eventually. But if you can pitch with really good quality pictures, then that will help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Is there anything you wish you'd been told about running an agency or about pitching when you're starting out?
Yeah, I think as a general rule, I'm pretty happy with all the mistakes I've made.
Oh, well, that's a good position to be in.
I think I've learned from them. Something that I'm sure somebody probably did tell me before we started up Engage, and I probably didn't really sort of get it or understand it at the time, is get a good lawyer and get a good accountant and make sure both of them are younger than you.
Well, they'll still be around when
you retire. You want them to retire first. Same for dentists, same for GPs. Always younger ones.
Younger than you. Well, very good tips. I mean, this has been great. Before we go, we always like to ask our guests about their favorite tech tips. And I know that Trello is one of yours. Is there anything else that you use as an editor that is useful, particularly?
As an editor, I will sometimes use things like the Hemingway app, I don't use Grammarly that often, just because it's a pain. But I don't always use the Hemingway app either. In terms of the business, I'm a big fan of Slack, and Slack and Trello are both made by Atlassian. It's a great Australian company. Slack is effectively our office. We don't have a physical office, and we have individual channels for each magazine. We have individual channels for the chat room. We have individual channels for dad jokes and recipes.
All the things.
We need to do that on our Slack, have a dad jokes channel.
Great having dad jokes. And it's like having basically little offices that you walk into and say, I'm just pop into the dad jokes office and see if there's any dad jokes that have popped up for me. And Trello, we don't only use obviously I use it for managing the story ideas. We use it for the production flow. It kind of mirrors the production flow that we have in the folder system that would be very common in publishers anyway. But being able to pull up the Trello board and just see where those cards are moving and where things are sitting in the flow is very convenient for us.
Makes sense. Wow, this has been so great, Rob. I think we've learned lots, and it makes me think a lot about pitching. I should do that more often.
I'm going to be definitely pitching after this.
Always open.
Your inbox is always open to our pitches.
Yeah, you'll be besieged after this, I promise. So tell us where people can find you at Engage Media and send you a pitch.
The easiest way is email me at
Mhm.
rob@engagemedia.com.au, or if you go onto one of the magazine websites and send it to, editor@bytemagazine.com.au or editor@vetpractice, it'll either come to me or it'll come to John or someone who will be able to assess it. I would strongly recommend against pitching me via social media. A lot of people get in touch via LinkedIn. I really don't. I just don't like looking at LinkedIn. I don't like looking at it in the evenings when I'm watching TV. And so a little notification, I have to look at it because the notification tells me to, and I'm always disappointed. So don't worry about the social medias. And so I think email, either the editor at email or just rob@engagemedia.com.au and get to me.
Perfect. Well, this is fabulous. Thank you again, Rob, for being our guest this week. This brings us to the end of the show. But everyone who's listening, if you like the show, don't forget to leave a rating and review on the platform where you pick up your podcasts. And we'll pop everything that we've discussed in the show notes today so you can find out more about where to connect with Rob, read his fantastic article on Rachel's List. And I'll also put the pitch tracker in there as well for anyone who likes to organise their pitches.
Fantastic. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again to our wonderful sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software that helps freelancers run their business with confidence.
And don't forget, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you can check your welcome emails for an exclusive discount code on the annual subscription rate. You can also find it in the private Facebook Gold group, or just contact us at hello@rachelslist.com.au.